There is something in the unselfish and self-sacrificing love of a brute which goes directly to the heart of him who has had frequent occasion to test the paltry friendship and gossamer fidelity of mere man. Greetings, Poe fans, and welcome to the 6 Degrees of Poe.
Yay!
I am
It's a
Carmen Bolden,
and I'm Jeanie Smith.
and we are
We are the
Potastic
2.
2. Yay, we got it right, Jeanie.
Woohoo! We're getting there.
Yes, we are. Yes, welcome back, Poe fans. We are here for another episode, and we are going to, I guess, vary from the degree a little bit. That's a math pun intended. Ha ha, I know that wasn't that funny. I did make Jeanie laugh.
Maths.
But
Maths.
Jeanie and I were talking, and it's like we did 2 Halloween specials, one for season 1, one for season 2. And so we decided, let's do a Thanksgiving special.
Yeah, why not? Because it's such an overlooked holiday.
It is. And, besides Christmas being the probably, number one holiday, but when you really think about it, I think I read something somewhere that Thanksgiving, more families get together, more of their family, all the people get together on Thanksgiving versus Christmas.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with it's an extended family type of thing.
Yeah.
Where if you come from big families where you've got a lot of siblings and then you've got parents, and then if they're married, if the siblings are married, then it's their husbands or wives and then their kids. And so it can be a rather large get together. But most of the time, if they are married and they have children, they're not going to want to come over and spend the Christmas with
Right.
everybody. So Thanksgiving is like the one holiday where it's everybody. You can have the extended family, you can have the cousins, the siblings, everybody, and then they can do their normal happiness of being a family and having it together. But as things have changed in the past few years, especially with us, with the pandemic and all this kind of thing, most people that don't have large families or have lost a lot of families, they call it Friendsgiving now instead of just Thanksgiving.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we do. So, Jeanie will be coming over to our house on Thanksgiving this year, along with several of our other friends and my husband's children as well. So I love the concept of Friendsgiving and have really enjoyed it each year we've done this.
Yeah. And the one best part about Thanksgiving, because with the Friendsgiving and everything, is for so many people who don't have families or get adopted into families or are foster families or everything, it gives them a chance of being a family.
Yeah.
Hence, we talk about Poe. He had a mother, he had a father, and then he didn't have a father, and then his mother died at 3. He had siblings, but he still didn't have a very stable type of environment for a
Right.
family. So his family turned out to be more non-blood than blood.
Oh, absolutely. And, his older brother, Henry, did get to go live with, his Poe's actual family, his relatives, his grandparents. And then, Rosalie, the younger sister, went to live with the Mackenzies. Poe went to live with the Allens. And so they were so dispersed because economically it was better to split up the children and have families that could care for them.
Yeah, and which was very much a way of life in those early 1800s,
Absolutely.
because not a lot of people, especially in the mid or the upper New England areas, would take in a lot of family members, children, or just take in a lot of children to get most of them. If they're a certain age, they would take them as apprentices.
Right.
So they would be working.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Younger, then most of the time they would end up in a foster home or an orphanage until they were old enough to get out and get an apprenticeship or run away.
Yeah. And usually that was what, early to mid teens, I guess at the earliest for apprenticeships.
Yeah, usually around about 11 or 12,
Okay.
they
Yeah,
would
that's
they would send them off to, it was a type of indentured servitude, but they called them
mm,
apprenticeships because they would work for a certain particular people. I mean, Benjamin Franklin, in the 1700s, he was one of those that was known to have apprentices to
mm-hmm.
come print, his shop and help with the newspaper, and he was very good about letting anybody. He was diverse. He was a
Yeah.
diverse type of person.
Yes, he was.
And so, but yeah, most of them having more people at your dinner table really wasn't what a lot of people look for unless you were blood,
Yeah.
especially with the upper societies. They weren't big on taking in um, the Oliver Twist type of
Yeah.
characters. Had to throw a
Now,
couple Dickens
now
in there.
I was gonna say you're bringing in the Dickens, and but Poe did live with the Allens for about what 5 years, and when they did live in England, um, but yeah, he didn't get to meet Charles until later, later in life.
Exactly. So it was, but it was very much, Poe possibly could have been one of those orphans that was living on the street and stealing and everything that, Dickens wrote about, even though it was more of a British based than America. But like you were saying, his older brother got to go with actual family.
Mm-hmm.
His sister ended up with a totally different foster family, and then he ended up with a different foster family. And
Yeah.
even the Allens weren't the uh, upper society until a few years later, when
Well, John,
John
let's
got
see.
his
Yeah.
inheritance from his uncle.
Yeah, John Allen did get a big inheritance from, I think it was his uncle, and that's what really set him up for his businesses and things like that. And that's one reason of moving to England. And he was they were not hurting for money at that point. But yeah, I mean, so many different scenarios. We're digressing a little bit, but I think it's interesting to think about, Poe, what if Poe had gone to live with his grandparents? What would his life have been like? How would it have changed? Or, Jeannie, just like you said, what if the Allens weren't there or another family to take Poe in and he did become, America's Oliver Twist? What would have happened to him?
Yeah, I mean, and because we're on the theme of Thanksgiving,
Mm-hmm.
even though he may not have gotten along very well with John Allen,
Mm-hmm.
he had to have been very thankful to have those opportunities to be a part of a family and not end up in an orphanage or end up as a street urchin, just trying to
Mm-hmm.
find a way to survive.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I think because Francis Allen adored him, that
Mhm.
gave him a whole lot of what he needed, in a mother figure. And
Right.
so that I think, like what you're saying with the being thankful, definitely that aspect of it as well. Because once he was old enough, he probably thought about those things.
Absolutely, especially him being a writer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are very much staples in what he writes. If you read between the lines, so to speak,
Yeah.
of his works, whether it be poetry or whether it be his short stories, even when he was posting in just the magazines like the Auguste Dupin and
Mm-hmm.
everything, you can still see there's representations in there of some of the turmoil that he's dealing with in his real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he was always striving, even though we might not see it as happy endings in some of his stories,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like there was always a sense of justice that he was searching for.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Thanksgiving is, like we said, it's one of those overlooked type of holidays because, it's not as popularized as Christmas because that's all about, gift giving and celebrations of a different sort. And Halloween is all about, it's candy and
And spooky.
yeah, it's spooky, it's horror, it's candy, it's all that weirdness.
Oh,
But you have Thanksgiving right smack in the middle, and you're
yeah.
going, one of these is not like the others. This one
Yeah.
doesn't kind of belong. Um,
Well, and with Christmas, you have a very large religious aspect to it. And for the Jewish faith, Hanukkah is right, very close to the same time frame. And Thanksgiving is it to me it does have a religious connotation to it, but it's not as I think what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say prominent, but it doesn't speak to the religious side of it as much as I think it really does have.
right, it's
Does
not
that
as
make
in
sense?
actual religion.
Yeah.
I mean, even though their prayers said that, being thankful and, that of grace that most people divine in the religion to put to Thanksgiving, but
Hmm.
it wasn't created out of a religious type
Event.
environment.
Yeah,
Even
absolutely.
many people automatically equate Thanksgiving with the Pilgrims,
Hmm.
and they did have their own Thanksgiving celebration for life because they survived.
Right.
So that's why I think Thanksgiving is more about survival and being thankful that you are still around, and
Yeah.
um, that I think that's why it's not considered as much as a religious type of holiday, even
Yeah.
though there's a big organized religion around it that's being celebrated. But I don't think it is more or less a religious holiday. And that's just my
Yeah.
opinion. But
Yeah,
I
no,
think
I agree. It
holiday.
that's what I say. I mean, it's the charity that comes with it when people do give of themselves to, go help feed the homeless and things like that. And a lot of I know like at school, we've had a coat drive right around this time frame. A lot of canned food drives happen.
Right.
We had ours earlier this year, but I've seen them when they are right around Thanksgiving and things like that, and making donations and things, which goes to that faith, hope, charity of Thanksgiving.
Right. And I mean, yeah, and I would venture that Poe is a very big proponent of being thankful for the
Yeah.
things that he had. Now, he probably had his own little tendencies of tantrums. We've seen that, and we've discussed it in certain things about him getting cut off by John Allen
Mm-hmm.
because he wouldn't bow down and do what he was wanting of it, and he joined the military to kind of snub his nose and
Mm-hmm.
John Allen, but that's more like a teenage rebellion type thing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But
But
still, yes, thankful for not being out on the street. Yeah.
and not only not being out on the street, even though Poe kind of had bad luck when it came to women, uh, he does talk a lot about the women that he's had and met in his life and given homage to them and thanks to
Mm-hmm.
them
Oh,
for things
absolutely.
in his life.
Yeah.
And I think that is the true spirit of this particular holiday
Mm-hmm.
is just showing thanks for whether it's the people that have been in your life that are no longer there, people that have touched your life, or people that have steered you to a better life,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. That's a very nice way to say that.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, Poe had a lot to be thankful for, even though his career was not
What
anything
he
until after his death. He
Yeah.
still had some semblance of some success in areas.
But it's like if he hadn't died at 40, what would have gone on
Mhm.
after, and we've done the what I always bring up the what if scenarios a lot of times, and you know you wonder because he was on kind of a accelerated path at the time of his death, and but that was 1849. Civil War was right around the corner. That could have made or broke him, depending on what happened with the war and things like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I do think he was thankful for the small things he had, thankful for, Francis Allen, for Virginia and Maria, Muddy, um, and some of the other people that were very impressionistic on his life.
Absolutely. And that to me, as I said, that's probably his biggest contribution to the spirit of that holiday, even though,
Hmm.
we haven't found anything saying where he did celebrate it with a family or anything. But we've also talked about how Thanksgiving wasn't one of those staple times at that moment.
Right, right. I was going to say some of the research I found was that, I mean, of course, it wasn't an official holiday during the
Right.
time of Poe's life. And, something that I found was that in the late 1820s, the area, the states, colonies, whatever in New England were celebrating a Thanksgiving type of event, but not necessarily on the same day. It may have been November, but it might have been the first Tuesday. It wasn't that, last Thursday of the month, or what is it, the third Thursday of the month.
Yeah.
And then the South really didn't take to it because it was more of a Northern idea. And so the South kind of eschewed it because it was like, we're not going to do what them Yankees are doing. So,
Well, and on that aspect too, it you have to look at the geography of it.
right.
Boston and the New England colonies and all those areas, they were a lot more populated, but they were also a lot closer together. So
Yes.
you still had, within a distance of a lot of people that could get together and celebrate. Whereas in the South and the larger colonies that had become states like
Mhm.
Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, you know, all of those, you got a lot of spread out agriculture type
Oh,
environment.
absolutely. And the traveling
Mm.
between the states would have been a lot harder than the New England states.
Yeah, because if you think about it, in today's time, a lot of people that say they live 50 or, 60 miles from their closest relative as a minimum. So
Hmm.
they're still having to travel to get to that, but they have the vehicles now. Back in those days, if you lived 50 or 60 miles from your family, that was a good day's trip by horse or wagon
Yeah, if
just
you
for
had
the
a
people.
horse. Yeah, if
Yeah.
you had a horse or could hire a wagon or had your own wagon. Absolutely.
And so, yeah, there is the historical aspects of the beginnings of a Thanksgiving, but as you were saying, it wasn't always in the same day, and sometimes it wasn't even in the same month.
Right, right.
So
Yeah,
there was always
it's
that part. So I mean, Thanksgiving in those time periods in the 1820s and Thursdays, 30s, the 20s and the 30s, not the Thursdays.
right,
Uh,
right. Of the 1800s, 19th century.
the 1800s, the 18 Thursdays, the 18 Thursdays of the few months. But anyway,
Yeah,
no, some of those, they were celebrating just because they had survived something.
right.
Like,
Yes.
there were a lot of historical events. There was a lot of turmoil that was still going about in those days. And that's why, even from the 1600s, from the early times of the pilgrims, and even farther back in the 1500s,
Hmm.
it has been dedicated to some type of Thanksgiving, but it wasn't in the United States area, but it was still in North America.
Yeah,
It and I think that's why it has a lot of non-religion aspects to it.
yeah. And one I want to make a point right here too, because some of our listeners may be going, why aren't they going into more of a history of
Mm.
Thanksgiving? And the reason is that Jeannie will be doing a time talk about the history of Thanksgiving coming
Right.
out very soon. And so we don't want to take away from what she's going to do from for that.
Yeah, I don't want a lot of overlap from
Yeah,
what we're discussing now to what I might discuss then, because it's more
exactly.
of a historical aspect to it, and this is more of how can we talk about the lifetime of Poe and Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And you were discussing a lot about the food items too, and we were discussing the
Yes.
difference between the get-togethers in the New England area versus the
Mm-hmm.
Southern area. But there was also a lot more differences in what they ate when they celebrated.
Yeah, so what I found was that specifically, and I'm sure this was probably like this in the 1820s, but I found an article that talked about Thanksgiving in the 1830s, and some of the things that they ate were chicken pie. So I'm kind of thinking it was probably some variation of like a chicken pot pie, of
Absolutely.
some, yeah, mincemeat pie, which I think some people still do eat today, but I think that is more of a northern delicacy.
Yeah, and that also goes back to uh the options of what they had to eat
Right.
and what they had available, because there was some farming everywhere in those areas, but there wasn't as much farming in the New England in those areas as there were in the southern areas.
Yeah.
And I think venison also was one of the meats, if they truly had meat
Yeah.
to eat, if it wasn't a big vegetable deal or a soup
Hmm.
or a mince pie or shepherd's pie or something like that. And
Exactly.
these are types of casserole dishes. Let's just admit it. They were
Yeah.
casserole dishes that people could just throw together to feed a big gathering and cook easy enough, because they didn't have the DoorDash or the Uber Eats
Or
and all
Cracker
that
Barrel.
thing. Yeah, Cracker Barrel. They didn't have those that they could just order or just go eat at, but they had to
Oh
actually
yeah.
cook it themselves. Oh Lord, that's horrible.
Oh, I
Uh,
know. Yeah, one
no.
year I was traveling for Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving Day and stopped at a Cracker Barrel and had Thanksgiving dinner. That was
Yeah.
several years ago. But some other things that they ate, boiled stuffed chicken. So I'm kind of thinking like whatever the stuffed part was in my mind, because it didn't give any specific details, but I'm thinking it could have been like a cornbread dressing stuffing, depending on where you're from, it's either dressing or it's stuffing. But I also, kind of think too, depending on your your economic status, it could have had crab, it could have had shrimp, it could have had some fish. Again, didn't go into details, but just thinking about what would have been available at the time.
Right. And whether you had somebody who hunted, you know,
Hmm. Yes,
and that's another thing. And I'm going to throw Dickens in here for just a moment. How,
we
in
are
his
getting close to Christmas, so
story, you had to go to buy the goose. Can't forget the goose.
right.
Probably had goose too. But you'd have to go, especially in those high populated areas, down to the store to buy the fixins
Yeah,
if you didn't grow them yourself or you didn't hunt for yourself.
yeah.
The
Oh
people in
yeah.
New England area probably, especially if they're prominent like the Allens or something like that, they're not going to go out and shoot a turkey or a deer or a rabbit and skin it and have it for dinner.
Right, right.
They pay people to do that for them.
Yeah, exactly.
And that had a
Um,
lot to do with what they ate. So
yeah, they also had roast mutton was
yeah.
another thing that they did. And then they did eat turkey sometimes. And this was the kind of interesting thing. When we think about the turkeys, that we eat nowadays and have eaten, Jeannie and I are in our 50s. And so
Mhm.
we've been around, half a century. And so our whole lives, turkeys have been pretty plump and juicy, depending on how you cook them. I mean, I have had dry turkey and was like, because it's not very good.
Oh
But
no, not at all.
you have to put more gravy on it. But the interesting thing is that the turkeys back then, the way the turkeys got to market for people to buy them was that you had people that were turkey drovers who would like drive they would like herd the turkeys into town, in the market. And I know this sounds silly, but the thing when I read that, what came to mind was the movie Miracle on 34th Street when Santa is talking to Natalie Wood's character, and they sing to market, to buy a fat pig. And so I just thought that came to my mind. I know that's silly, but anyway, so the turkeys back then were tougher and not as plump. So I think the other things that just talked about all the different types of pies, they preferred those because they tasted better.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to you don't want a bone to eat for Thanksgiving, or you don't
Yeah,
want a turkey, which that's what I was thinking of, droving the turkeys to market. They're going to end up being turkey jerky.
yeah,
And you were thinking
exactly.
about Miracle on 34th Street. I automatically thought about WKRP and the turkeys falling from the.
Oh, yes.
I'm like, yeah, nobody's going to eat Thanksgiving turkeys after that because they can't fly.
I know. What was his line? It was Carlson that said it. For the
God has
love of, yeah,
yes,
it's my
thought
wit.
that turkeys could fly.
Yes.
Yes, no, they can't. That's why they had to walk them everywhere, and that's why they probably, and like we were talking about, the distance from where they go to get the food versus
Yeah.
having it readily available.
Yeah. And what at the market did people have? And like you mentioned, what people raised on their own, and pies, with having probably a lot more access to flour and milk and things to where you could make the dough, that would have been a very easy way to create those dishes.
Yeah, and a lot of the times they would make an abundance of food
Hmm.
because they would have family over for a few days, not for just
Right.
a few hours. And that's why
Yeah.
they needed to make sure they had enough food that was going to last for a few days. Because if the family shows up, they're not just going to turn around and go away another hour because they usually have a 4 or 5 day trip to get to family members. So
E-
they were
exactly.
a long time of celebrating, at
Well,
least 2 days.
oh, yeah. And one of the things I also found was that they would make the pies weeks ahead of time and put them store them in an area where, they could kind of freeze because, temperatures, up there would be a lot colder. And until the day of the whatever the celebration of Thanksgiving was. And I'm sure they also did that too because they might think, oh, we're only going to have, you know, grandma and grandpa come, but it might end up being, Aunt Susie and Uncle, John with their 10 children.
Yeah.
So they had to prepare for, let's just keep adding to the stash so we have enough food.
Yeah. So it's always about they wanted to make sure they had enough for everybody, that
Yeah,
nobody was left out, whether that was for 1 day, 2 days, or, most maybe a 3 day celebration.
right.
Because some family members, they didn't show up on one day, they came the next day while the others went home.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that
And
had a lot to do with it too.
oh, absolutely. And kind of talking about like the people that would come, definitely the people that would come home for Thanksgiving were the adult children. So, depending on how many children you had, if they were grown, married off, even if they were in town, in the house next door, or if they were another city away, the adult children would come home to celebrate with the entire family, and
Right.
kind of a homecoming, I guess you could say. And then it was very interesting. Some of the other things that I found, they would at this time practice their table manners with eating with a knife. And so I thought that was very interesting. So I guess in just regular old everyday eating, they wouldn't necessarily eat with utensils, or whatever. Depending, I'm sure it too. It also depended on the your economic class, and so you had to be proper on Thanksgiving. I guess because you're dressed up too.
Yeah, and that's another thing because it was more of a formal
Yes,
dining experience because
yes,
they treated them like parties.
yes,
So much just, oh, we're having dinner. It's more of a party because you had company coming, as the old saying goes, and
exactly.
you had to show your best foot forward.
Yes.
And then
And
a lot of the times, other dinners, if you were in a working class family, you
hmm
didn't you didn't have the luxury of spending hours baking or cooking or just sitting around. You had a certain amount of time that you had to eat and get on and get out and go back to work.
right. Exactly. Yeah. There were no government holidays back then of that
Right.
sort. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Um,
all hours of the day too, from early to bed, early to rise, as Ben Franklin said in his Richard's Almanac,
oh yeah.
early to
Poor,
early to
poor
rise.
Richard's Almanac. Yeah.
Yeah,
hmm
um, makes I done lost it. I got mixed.
Um,
Early to bed, early to rise makes man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
yeah, there it is. Yep.
Yeah, I was like, I can't remember. Got interrupted. Okay, so yeah, that's it. So yeah,
Well,
that's
and
the thing. Thanksgiving was a time for these types of people that had to spend a lot of their working time not having family time, and so
yeah,
this is another way that they could celebrate that,
yeah, kind of,
celebrate having families and being a part of the families.
yeah, it kind of like let me stop and be present in my family and, enjoy the company and the family time and shared experience and things like that. And which leads me to the next thing that I found. They would have different activities and things that they would do. I think now, as soon as, especially if you have a earlier in the day Thanksgiving meal, the men are ready to, and some women, but, I kind of, I guess, stereotype it as most men want to go sit and watch football games all day long.
Right.
Well, obviously, they didn't have that in the 1820s and 30s. And
Oh,
so, one of the things that they did for entertainment was they would have target shooting matches. And so I
no.
thought that was really kind of cool. So, especially those who like to hunt and things like that, they would, set these up. And it didn't really say how long during the day that it would go on, but I'm sure depending on what they were target shooting, or if they did like a hunt where they were on the on the hunt for, upper classes, probably like, the fox hunts and things like that.
Yeah, I mean that's where the turkey shoots come into play.
Yeah.
Most of them they would go out and hunt dinner and then they would come home and fix it. But
hmm
they would also, since it was a day of rest and a day of thanks for having family, they would spend their time like horseshoes, tossing
Yeah.
horseshoes, playing horseshoes. That would be one of those games, and
hmm
a lot of the games that we don't have anymore because they didn't have television, they didn't have, and some of them actually would play music because there were a lot of musicians in the
Yeah.
family, and they would get together and they would either sing hymnals or they would play music and
hmm
dance and those types of things. Whether it be games, the guys would go out and, playing Red Rover or sack races where they would,
hmm
get the old barley sacks that the moms had gotten their corn out of and stuff, and they would hop around the yard in them and those kinds of things. So, it's not like now, yeah, you eat dinner and then you go and you watch the Thanksgiving Day parade, and then you watch the Thanksgiving Day football games. And so you're
While
watching
you're
other
in a food coma.
yeah, you're watching other people do that while you're sitting there and trying to digest the turkey
Yeah,
and the chicken
exactly.
instead of getting out and running around the yard to, get them working through your body.
Oh, I know. And then one other event that would take place was that because all the family were gathered together, and which did not happen all the time. I think even at Christmas that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like everybody was together. They would have weddings. And so I thought that
Okay.
was really kind of cool. I think it would be very interesting to look back at, records, census records and things like that to see how many people really did get married, especially those that were having the day in November. How many people, got married in November?
Yeah, and I mean, that would be a perfect opportunity, like we were talking about. Getting big families together on a certain time was very difficult, especially the farther away they lived.
Yeah,
So why not, as the old saying goes, kill two birds with one stone?
right.
You can have a
Exactly.
reception, a marriage, a wedding, have a holiday thrown in there, give thanks, eat, and party.
Yeah, exactly. And as I say, you said, kill two birds with one stone, shoot
Yeah, I'm still
two
on the porch.
turkeys
Yeah,
with one gun.
yeah. Hey, and
Oh,
sometimes if they lined up just right, you could take out two or three in one shot.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, Thanksgiving was very different, you know, 200 years ago. Gosh, that's hard to think about.
I don't want to. I feel old enough as it is.
I know. One other interesting thing too, and I hadn't really even thought about this of where the origin came from. I didn't like dig too deep, and you may know more about this than me, but Lydia Marie Child was inspired bit for from Thanksgiving to write the poem "Over the River and Through the Woods to Grandmother's House We Go."
Oh
And
yeah,
that was in 1844 when she wrote that, which was, 5 years before Poe died. So he was around when that came out.
yeah, and makes perfect sense too because even if I'm not mistaken, Jingle Bells was written as a
Hmm.
Thanksgiving song,
It was.
but
That was a
became
trivia
popular.
question we've had, Jeannie.
Yes, so Jingle Bells that we know of today was actually written as a Thanksgiving tune, not for a Christmas tune. And then, yeah, over the hills, through the dale to grandmother's house we go.
Yeah.
Perfect
And
sense because it was rendition of what they had to go through just to get to, the house to celebrate.
yeah, and I was just looking up while you were explaining all that. Jingle Bells was written in 1850, and just from this source that I found, legend says that the song made its debut in Medford, Massachusetts, composed by James Lord Pierpont, who was a
Yep.
native of the town and wanted to write something to commemorate the town's annual sleigh races around Thanksgiving. So
Yep.
that's really neat to think about because, we always associate Jingle Bells with Christmas, but it's really Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot because, as we've said, Thanksgiving wasn't a protected or celebrated holiday like it is today
Mm-hmm.
in the early years of America.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that, whether it be, there was April, I think they even celebrated it during April one year.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the presidents, and I'll talk more about this on my time talks, but a
Right.
lot of the presidents wanted to keep that alive of, reminding people, hey, we survived a revolution. We survived becoming a country. We have a lot to be thankful for. We must appreciate it. And I
Yeah.
think that's another thing about this particular celebration is it gives everyone a chance to be appreciative of whatever they
Yes.
have in life.
Yeah.
Whether it be another breath they take when they wake up in the morning, whether it be having a roof over their head, having food on their table.
Yeah.
you know there's a lot of people, even back in those days there was a lot of people that didn't have that and
Yeah.
don't have that today.
Yeah.
So
You're exactly right.
it
Well,
was no, go ahead.
oh no, no. I was going to say, so I'm sure we've talked about Poe a little bit and how that we, didn't find a whole lot of information that Poe ever celebrated a true Thanksgiving. However, I'm sure our listeners are probably going, so is there some connection Poe has with Thanksgiving? Jeannie,
Yep.
is there?
Oh, absolutely there is, and it's kind of a very, well, it's not
It's
really a,
roundabout. It's
it's
roundabout.
it's an indirect connection because
Yeah.
of the lady who was, I mean, she was doggedly a proponent of getting Thanksgiving respect,
She was the
getting it
catalyst
respected.
that got
Yeah,
it approved.
exactly. And this happened to be the lady who was very well influenced with Poe by publishing one of his works I know of
Yeah,
that
well,
we
he
talked
actually a
about.
little bit more, a little there. She did more than just one.
Yeah, but I was talking about the one she published after he, that was not considered one of his works that we talked about on Poe Unplugged alone.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
That's the one I was trying to bring into that, he probably didn't know it, but it was one of those that was published because it was published after he was dead.
Right, right.
So,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. He So the lady's name, and Jeannie's going to go more into this. We're gonna just talk some of the basic things connected to Poe.
Right.
But her name was Sarah Josepha Hale, and she was actually 21 years older than Poe. So, not too much of a distant age between them. But she was editor of Godey's Ladies book, and for many, many years, proponent of all kinds of things of, you know, getting women to, think about wearing white dresses as wedding dresses and things like that. And there's more to it than that. But one of the first works that Godey's Lady Book out of Philadelphia published Poe's work in 1830, his collection of Alaroth, Tamerlane, and Minor Poems. And what's really kind of cool is that the whole reason this happened was because her son, David Hale Jr., was at West Point when Poe was at West Point. So while they kind of said Poe's work was very youthful, and I'm going to read a quote from an article I found. This is what the um, Godey's said of his work, his this first work. It is very difficult to speak of these poems as they deserve. A part are exceedingly boyish, feeble, and altogether deficient in the common characteristics of poetry, but then we have parts too of considerable length, which remind us of no less a poet than Shelley. The author, who appears very young, is evidently a fine genius, but he wants judgment, experience, tact. And so, I think a lot of scholars have, said that, his first works, are not the caliber of what he became, and he wrote later. And so this all kind of ties together of, Poe's development as a writer throughout his life.
Yeah, because of his experiences,
Yeah.
he got better, and especially when he became editors himself of certain magazines and
Hmm.
newspapers, and that kind of helped his own writing to the point. But yeah, I think it was very interesting that Sarah had you know, such a connection to Poe,
Hmm.
because that's one of the things we talk about is the 6 degrees, and her
Absolutely.
with Poe at West Point, and then Poe eventually getting his publishings through her magazine, which she was one of those very unusual in that time period of a woman being in that position of having a
Yeah.
magazine and having the ability to use it to voice her own ideas, especially, and don't, tell me if I'm misinterpreting this, but she was very much a feminist because
She
even though she was
was,
a
but
proponent
yeah,
of,
go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I mean, she was a proponent for posting or publishing recipes and ethical things about the
Mhm.
family and the home. But I'm talking about her being a professional by having a magazine and having, that type of recognition in a society that was male dominated.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you, Jeannie, from the things that I read. And Godey's Lady Book was considered like the first women's magazine. And she was, I'm here in a second, I'll look up how long she was editor there because it was for several years. The kind of coincidental thing about her being so much of a, um, not necessarily a feminist, but I guess feminist would be the right word. Feminist in the sense of the traditional feminists, where that the origin started. More of a just a proponent of trying new things, and there's a word I'm looking for, but it's not coming out right now. But anyway, she, even as much as she was like fighting for different women's rights, she didn't necessarily agree that the women should have the right to vote. So it's very weird.
Well, and it's also very true of that time period too. Voting, even women who were such a part of the life and wanting to be not considered just strictly in the house, being a
Hmm.
homemaker and those kinds of things,
Yeah.
didn't mean that they wanted to fully follow in the footsteps of the men and become
Right.
what they are and what they do. And voting, one of the things about that is men were all about making the decisions, and
Right.
especially educated, wealthy men.
Hmm.
And women were told that they didn't have the right because they couldn't even own property.
Yeah.
They were
Right.
just as much of downtrodden as a lot of others in that thing because they were seen as no more than property themselves,
Yeah.
especially because their ideas is when you got to a certain age, you got married and you became that person that took care of the home. You made sure there was food on the table, the laundry was done, all that kind of stuff. But and she wasn't one of those that was fighting for women's rights of voting and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of that was because she didn't necessarily want to have that much of a disconnect between what the roles were
Yeah.
considered as norm for women in that day and age. But
Right.
she wanted to help them become better at those roles.
Yeah. And that Godey's Lady Book can like published 22 pieces after that original collection that they did, 22 pieces of Poe from 1834 to 1849, and that was all different, short stories, poems, essays, and the like. And
Yeah.
so they really did provide, a lot of publication for him. um so that was huge for Poe.
So that's and it. And it definitely ties in so much with what we're talking about with Thanksgiving, and I'll definitely pull that tie together, during the Thanksgiving time talk
Hmm.
specifically. So, but it just
Yeah.
goes to show that Poe had a lot of connections that he himself probably didn't even make a note of
Right.
until, until it's too late, perhaps.
Yeah. One other thing I was gonna make a note of, that in Godey's Ladies Godey book, Godey's Lady book, I always want to say it wrong. Some of the other writers that contributed: Emerson, Longfellow, Hawthorne, Stowe, um, and I believe Louisa May Alcott. And so, I mean, there were several big name authors that were published in here. I mean, and that says a lot about this, this particular publication.
Well, I also want to point out that it's kind of ironic that we use the terms of big name authors and we use the terms of classical authors and all that, when
Hmm.
in all actuality, probably during that time period, they were no more than just, run down, underappreciated, overworked,
Right.
out of work
Yeah.
authors at the time. And that's probably why they got so much, joy out of just the small publications. I mean,
Right. Exactly.
because to them it probably wasn't a big deal, or it was, no, excuse me, it was a big deal for them because they
Hmm.
weren't the big names at that time. They are
Right.
now. That's when we think about it. But how much of a publicity did they truly have in those days, compared to what they've got now? Because
Yeah.
think about it, Little Women, um, is one of my favorite books of all time.
Yeah. It's a good
And
one.
yeah. And then you had Thoreau, and you had Longfellow, and
Emerson and
Emerson,
the
and all the,
some of those transcendentalists.
yeah. So I don't think Poe was happy with that either. But even Poe, he sold his what first poem for like $14 or something. And I think,
Yeah, I
well, the
think it may
one
have been
book,
it was less than that. I think it was less than
yeah,
that.
maybe that was the book that they were going to publish, because when he was on his way to New York, he was going to be publishing something, and that's when he got, stopped off in Baltimore and died. Uh, and I think because they were offering to pay him to publish, I think, a book of anthology poems that he had.
Hmm.
So that didn't work out for him.
Yeah.
Well, while he was alive, anyway.
Yeah.
Became
But
very popular for us after he's dead because we love him.
oh yeah. One thing I was trying to find, and I'm not finding it. I've got the articles pulled up that I read from, for research, and the one article I found says it doesn't give me like specific dates of when she was the editor, but just for 50 years she edited um, most of the periodicals, that went into Godey's Lady book. So
The one
she,
thing that we found was that her first, um, it was like she began the to agitate for the Thanksgiving holiday starting in 1827.
yes, yes,
So, that was one of the things that it was, she was involved with the editor of the Ladies Magazine starting from 1827. So,
yeah. And we won't give away too much more than that because you're going to talk about it in your time talks. So, hint, after you listen to this episode, once the time talk is out, you can get more information.
yeah, you can hop on over to YouTube and you can get the full load of Thanksgiving.
Yes, hop on the time machine for time talks with Jeanie.
Run back into run back into the day when Thanksgiving wasn't a holiday. It was mostly just, hey, we're alive. Yay. because that's pretty much what the celebration was in those days. It was like,
Ab-
oh, look, we live, we don't, we eat, we live.
yeah, I
Another day.
mean, because with conditions and circumstances that they knew, the people then knew no different, you know, of
Mm-hmm.
what life could be with, modern advancements and things like that. It was, I'm sure, a struggle, especially through winters in New
Yeah.
England and things like that. And like when you think about, the opposite, the summers in the South, how horrible they could have been without air conditioning, things like that. So yes, it was a thanks to survival.
Yeah. Not only that, it was a survival of having a job.
Yeah.
Or if we're at war at this time, it's like, oh, look, we survived to come home. Or,
Hmm. Yeah,
we
providing for
have the
family and yeah.
aggression of another country trying to take us over.
Hmm.
Because that's pretty much what they were celebrating in those early days, is just, hey, we're still trying to be a country. We're still working on it. Give us a break. We're doing the best we can.
Exactly. Well, and kind of with our Thanksgiving special, one thing that I think Jeannie and I both really want to say is we are so thankful for you Poe fans that listen to us and continue to support us in every way, shape, or form, because we could not do what we do without your support. So thank you,
Right.
thank you, thank you. We are very thankful for you.
Yes, absolutely. We are thankful for Poe and him sharing his wonderful works with us. Even it
Yes,
didn't work out for him until after he was dead, but it's worked out so much for us, and we're thankful that we have those those people who are just as fanatical as we are over
yes,
that stick with us and show their appreciation. And that's what we want to say, more or less, of anything on this Thanksgiving Day, is that we are very appreciative for our 6 degrees of Poe fans.
yes, absolutely.
And we hope you stick around and, hang with us for many, 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 many moons later.
Yes. And as I always say, forevermore.
Yes, forevermore.
I try to always do that creepy too, and it probably sounds really silly sometimes, but that's okay.
Yeah, I don't think you kind of got that Vincent Price creepiness going on there.
I'll have to practice that.
I need some Boris Karloff and some Vincent Price, and then really bring it in
Yeah.
forevermore.
Actually, I what we can do is go find him saying that and then just like have it as our little button, when he
Get a
says it
ringtone.
forevermore.
Get a ringtone or a notification symbol on the phone. Forevermore.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And then I have a raven cawing after it.
Oh, I can do the calling.
Yeah, I can too. Well, Jeannie, I think we have digressed around to the end of our Thanksgiving special.
Yes, and we've given thanks, and we give many, many more thanks, and we hope many, 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 many more Thanksgivings for everyone out there.
Yes,
Have
please
safe
be
holidays,
safe.
family.
Yes,
Yes, and just be very careful, and, be thankful for everything that you have, or, you know, that you're thankful just being here, I guess.
that's right. And reach out to those that are by themselves, and bring in that friendsgiving, and you know keep the connections alive, like we're trying to do with Poe, with the
Right.
6 degrees, and just just make it a very happy occasion and celebrate everything, including Poe.
Exactly. Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. So on that note,
We
we
are
are
Poe.
Poe out.
Having thus concluded a frugal meal, and donned my nightcap, with the serene hope of enjoying it till noon the next day, I placed my head upon the pillow, and through the aid of a capital conscience fell into a profound slumber forthwith.